Hi, this is David. So today I'm going to talk about the practice exam for exam 2. Um, I'm going to work with the first 20 questions out of 40 questions today. I'm going to upload another video tomorrow, um, getting the second part done. So hopefully if you have any question, got stuck when you are doing this set of practice exams, you can take a look of my video and just find out how others is doing these questions. Okay, let's see. Let's start. Question one. The share of checkbook deposits in total bank liabilities has what? Okay, so there will be a lot of fact check type of questions in this exam, just because a lot of materials for this section actually includes some information about what is the structure of the Fed, what is what are those important financial act that has been in and out of the financial history, all these kind of things, and including this type of one, what is the trend of something in the history? Okay, so basically you need to memorize it, you need to summarize, obviously that is going to help you to memorize. So for this, the right answer is C, is shrunk over time. Okay, so let me get the red marker over here. So shrunk over time. Though the behind story is really, when you are putting your money in the checking account, the bank really pays you a extremely small interest of how much money you can get there. So if you have a couple $100s, it is okay. But when you have thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, living in the bank, it's going to be an unwise decision just because how many financial innovations that are out there. Okay, so most commonly for these commercial banks, you have, other than putting your money in the checking account, you frequently see putting money in the saving account or putting in a time deposit account. Okay, so both of them is going to make you way more interest, not much, but way more interest than the money you're going to make if you put your money in the checking deposit. So for that reason, and for many new investment options over there, the checkbook deposit becomes really unpopular nowadays. Okay, so right now it's only like 17, I think it's like between 10 to 20% for a modern commercial bank. Okay, question two, the legislation overturning the Glass-Steagall Act is what? Okay, so I'm going to give you some example. The first of all, the right answer is Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, which is option C, which is over here. Um, I'm going to give you a story about all these acts, putting them together. Okay, and also in this review, I'm not going to pronunciate any act name that I don't think will be an answer in the real exam. Okay, so they're relevant, but they're not as important, especially for this exam. Okay, so let me go ahead work you with those big acts in the United States. Okay, so everything starts with an act that is called a National Banking Act. Um, Excuse me with my writing. Writing on this pad is not easy. That is at 1863. However, you don't have to know too much about it because I doubt it will be a major act. But what did it do is that it separated, it created this dual structure of state versus national bank. Okay, so it split the right of having a bank, running a bank, or operate, or actually monitoring a bank into a state level bank and a national level bank. Okay, but you don't have to know this. What's important is that we get into the Great Depression in the 30s. Okay, so it is a severe recession time, and after each recession time, we kind of create something new. So the act that was created based on the lesson we learned from the Great Depression is really Glass-Steagall. Okay, So you need to know this really well. Okay, really well. So Glass-Steagall, that is from 1933. As you notice, is right after the Great Depression. What it did is that, first of all, created FDIC so that bank panic is less likely to happen after this. It is really important. And also, it separate. I'm going to put separation. I'm going to put keyword in the parenthesis, but the separation between insurance company, investing bank, and commercial bank, that is very important over here, okay? And related to question 2, we said it is overturned. Part of it is overturned by the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act in 1999. I'm not going to write everything out, but what it did is exactly it relaxed some of the rules of Glass-Steagall, especially about the separation part, and also overturned. Okay, so we're talking about the separation part that has been overturned over here. And then we get into problem with the submortgage crisis from 07 to 09. And after that, we have Dodd-Frank. Okay, I'm going to talk more about Dodd-Frank Act of 2010 once we get a problem with it. Okay, so but this is a brief history according to the timeline. Okay, so as you can see, we were talking about this part. So Glass-Steagall to Graham-Leach-Bliley Act. Okay, something other than this is that there's another separate line that is McFadden Act versus option A. I'm not going to mention its name, but it is about, it is about something else. All right. So this is about more about the how do you have a distributional bank over there, but uh, as as I predict, it is not going to be one of the answers, the right answers. Okay, so I'm going to let it go for now. Question 3. When yield curves are steeply upward sloping. Okay, so basically, it is asking you this. You see a yield curve that looks like this, probably like this. Okay, and what does it mean? Okay, so the only thing you just need to know about is that what is a yield curve? What kind of story a yield curve is telling you, right? So basically on the horizontal line, this is a maturity time, okay? Maturity. And over here is going to be yield, that's or vertical axis. And if you still remember what we discussed in lab, every single point over here is a different investment option. Okay, so this is maybe a 1-year bond. This is a 3-year bond today, and this is probably for a 5-year bond. Okay, and the yield curve is reflecting the yield of all these securities. Okay, so one is upward sloping. It just means a long-term interest rate are above short-term interest rate, which is B over here. Okay, and for 4, a bank panic occurs when what? Okay, so the right answer is a situation in which many banks experience a bank run simultaneously. Okay, so remember, or banking system is really resilient to a lot of things. Is if one bank is going bankrupt, and it happens to be the bank where you deposit money, yes, you would go to that bank, but you do have FDIC, okay? So you have the insurance company to keep your deposit safe. And also, if it is temporary problem, they can borrow money. So your bank can borrow money from another bank. That is federal fund market, okay? So the things only goes wrong when everybody is, somehow lost the trust of their depositors. Okay, so all of them goes to the bank simultaneously. So when bank A is asking money from bank B is like, I'm sorry, I'm having exactly same problem, so I cannot save you, I cannot even save myself. and that's when the problem happens. Okay. All right, so question 5. One, a $10 check written on the First National Bank of Chicago is deposited in an account at Citibank. Okay, so this is not hard as long as you are comfortable of working with the T account. Okay, and to be honest, this is a really easy activity actually. So if this is a T account of First National Bank, and this is a T account of the Citibank. Okay, so Bank C. All right. So basically we have asset and liability over here, and one the check was written and deposited in another Citibank. So it is like people is withdrawing money from First National Bank of Chicago. So reserve actually drops by $10. And remember, since we gave them the cash, so since this bank gave the money out already, they no longer own those money to that depositor. So deposit is going to drop by $5 as well. Okay, and when the money is saved in Citibank, this is like a reversed operation of withdrawing money. So this is like saving money. So reserve is going to increase, deposit is going to increase. Okay, and now let's take a look of those answers. First one, the asset of Citibank is going to fall. That is not right. Both of them is going to increase, both asset and liability. Remember, both of them needs to shift together. Okay, otherwise it won't be balanced anymore. The liability of Citibank increased by 10. That is correct, right? Liability of First National Bank increased by 10. Nope, we're taking money out of it, so it will decrease. And for exactly the same reason, the reserve needs to drop by 10 instead of increase. Okay, so right answer is B. Okay, next one, question 6. Okay, let me scroll up a little bit. Okay, so a 1-year interest rate for the next 5 years are expected to be 4.545%. Okay, so the first thing I want you to notice is that, all right, where's my pen? Okay, it's here. There are 1-year interest rates. So all the interest rates over here are short term, okay, and they are expected. Okay, so if you still remember the terminology we were using in the lab, this should be I1 t plus something, and this is an expected. So this is what is given, okay? And the 5-year term premium. So basically, if you see premium, then we're using liquidity premium theory, which means after calculation, add this thing on it, okay? So what is a 5-year bond rate, okay? So I'm going to write the equation I5t, but this is basically just the average of every short-term interest rate that are given over here, 4 and 5%, and divided by how many of them? 5. So this is like taking average, okay? And plus, since there's a premium, don't forget you need to add 1% over here, all right? So let me do this calculation really quickly. So 4 plus 4 is 8, 10. So it's 15 divided by 5. That's going to be 3% per year plus 1%. So it's going to be, is that right? 5 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4 is 10. Another 10 divided by 5. Oh, it's 20 divided by 5. So that's 4%, and plus 1% is going to be 5%. Okay, so I'm right. So the option, the right selection is D. Okay. Question 7. Property that is pledged to the lender in the event that a borrower could not make his or her debt payment is called blah blah something. Well, this is collateral, and I don't think there's too many explanation I can give about this. Okay. Question 8 is a classic question for this exam. All right. So basically, you're given the bank, all right, with some information. We know the deposit that is 1,000 K, and then the beginning reserve is going to be 40 K. Okay, and it asks you, hey, how many maximum deposit can you take? Okay, So let me show you the classical. So this is a classical question, and there's a classical way of people doing it wrong, okay? The way people is doing it wrong is just to say, hey, you got a deposit of 100,000, and the reserve requirement ratio is 20%, so they're going to use the 20% using the deposit and get, all right, so then we need to have, 20K in reserve and we're fund. So right now we have $40,000 reserve. So the maximum outflow it can be, this bank can sustain is 20,000. Okay, that is not right. Let me show you why it is not right. Okay, so after the deposit, we know what is going to happen, right? So the reserve is going to decrease by 20,000. So afterward, the reserve becomes 20,000, and the deposit after the 20,000 outflow, it becomes 180. Oh, sorry, it's not 180, but it's 80,000. Okay, but do remember those 20%. The requirement you were calculating is based on 100K. Okay, over here, 20% of 80,000 is not 20,000. That is, so the reserve requirement after the withdrawal becomes 16,000. See? So if I take $4,000 more, obviously you're totally okay, right? So this is the classical way that you can, make a mistake with this type of question. However, the solution is not hard. Okay, so let me erase the wrong way of doing this and tell you how to do it correctly. The right way is just, since I don't know about what is a maximum outflow, whenever you see maximum deposit outflow, set it as an X. Okay, so I say I'm going to take X dollar out. Okay, and the deposit I'm going to take X dollar out as well. And at what condition there is no more deposit outflow I can sustain? That is, the reserve afterward becomes 40,000, right? Minus X. And if we have exactly same amount of reserve as the required reserve, then we're at the threshold, right? And then I'm going to use, this is after withdrawal deposit times the 20%, that's the required reserve ratio, to get the required reserve. So on the left hand side is after withdrawal, how many reserve do I have? On the right hand side is after withdrawal, what is the reserve requirement? Okay, and when they're equal, I reach the maximum. Okay, so we can calculate it out by, plug everything in. This is just a math. 40K minus X equals to 20% of 100K is going to be 20,000. Okay, so I got a reminder saying that there's a office hour coming up. Need to dismiss it. All right, let's keep on going. So this is, remember 20% is just a 0.2 times X. Okay, and let's solve for it, right? Moving the number to the left, we get 40K divided by 20K, that's 20K. And 1x, moving to the right hand side becomes, so positive 1x. So it's going to be 1 minus 0.2x, which is 0.8x. And this tells me x equals to 25K. Okay, so the right answer is B. Okay. So just remember, whenever you see maximum deposit outflow, set it as X, put it into the T account and calculate it out. Okay, not hard. All right, so for question 9, that's another typical question you're going to see that is regarding, hey, what happened during from 2007 to 2009? Okay, so even if you're, super smooth on this, you're super knowledgeable about the market, but if you don't know this history, you have no idea about what happened. Okay, so the only thing over here is that you need to memorize what's going on. Okay, so let me give you a story let me give you a brief story that I think this class, how this knowledge will be tested in this class. Okay, so everything starts with the big name that you still know today. Okay, So for all survival bigs, all right, you keep hearing their name mentioned in the news nowadays. Okay, so probably your customers, you're one of the customers of these banks as well. All right, so BOA, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase. So JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. That's our current big four national banks in here. Okay, and the reason you're hearing their names today still is because they're still alive. Okay, so that means during the 2007 to 2009, they either not in very big problems or they help to solve the problem. They acquire something, right? So let's start from here. So this is like from like a backward induction. Okay, so what happened to these banks during that time? So basically, they were asked by the Fed and say, hey, can you buy some company? So the company or banks they bought is that BOA bought Merrill Lynch and others. Okay, I'm not going to mention any name about other companies they bought because I don't think they will be tested. JP Morgan Chase bought Bear Stearns. Okay, and Wells Fargo bought Wachovia. Now, this is interesting because Wells Fargo at that time is actually the fifth largest bank in the United States, while Wachovia is actually the fourth biggest bank. All right. Okay, so there's one big name you heard a lot, but you didn't see on this list, which is Lehman Brothers. And they're famous for being bankrupted. Okay, so nobody bought them. All right, so it is they bankrupted, they're gone. Okay, so I think this graph plus Lehman Brothers will be enough for you to get the right answer with this exam. Okay, question 10. The era of bank panics in the United States was effectively ended by something. Okay, uh, and like I talked about, the FDIC, it is really effective. Okay, so there's no doubt about how putting the deposit insurance in the market can prevent the bank run. Okay, uh, question 11. Banks have a maturity mismatch since what happened? Okay. Maturity mismatch just means, the source of your fund and the use of fund has different maturity. Okay. So thinking about this, bank receive deposit, right? Bank receive borrow federal fund. Okay. All of them are really short term. All right. So they borrow short term and they make loans. They buy long-term securities, okay? And they lend long-term, okay? It also makes sense. Why? Because when they're borrowing short-term, they need to pay for the borrowing, right? But this, since they're short-term, it is a relatively small interest rate. But they lend long-term, okay? Making loans and everything. If you have a mortgage, you know how high the interest rates are. So when they're lending long-term, they're making higher interest rates. So on every single year, they're making money because of this maturity mismatch. Okay, so it should make sense. Question 12. If the expected path of 1 year interest rates over the next 4 years is 5%, 4%, 2%, 1%, and the expected theory predicts blah blah something like that. All right. So since it mentions expectation theory and didn't give me any premium, I'm going to say, okay, so this is easy. This is just taking the average. Okay, since every single thing over here is one year interest rates that are given. Okay, so that will be 5%, 4%, 2% plus 1% divided by 4. Okay, so on the average, let me think, 12 divided by 4, 3%. Okay. I encourage you, if you're not as familiar with these questions as I am, use the equation. Okay, so write out the equation. I'm looking for I for t, and I should know I1t, I1t plus 1, I1t plus 2 plus I1t plus t plus 3 expectation divided by 4 and see what number I can plug into this equation. Okay. Question 13 is a tricky one, all right? So secondary reserves include what? Okay. So basically, reserve is cash in your hand, cash in the bank. It's super liquid. Whenever you need this fund, it is available, it is there. Okay. The secondary reserve is really the short-term US government bond where it either matures pretty quickly or you can sell it pretty easily. Okay, so that's A. The tricky part about this is that somebody don't know whether there's a difference between the cash literally in the commercial bank's hand or the deposits at Federal Reserve banks. Okay, there is no difference. Both of them are considered as reserve. Okay, so it's not secondary reserve. Okay, and to be honest, most of the money that the commercial bank has, they decide to keep in their hand or deposited in the Federal Reserve banks. Okay. All right. Let's see. Question 14. Your bank is a falling balance sheet and looks like this. If the required reserve ratio is 10%, what action should the bank manager take just to meet the reserve deficiency if there is an unexpected deposit outflow of 50 million? Okay, so I think this question is really an easier version that you're going to see in the exam probably, because if I were you, have had no idea about money and banking, I'm going to guess 15 million over here because this is the most special option out here. All right, so but the right way to get it is really like this. All right, so if somebody withdraw every single money, every single cash that this bank has, the T account is going to look like this. So I'm going to minus reserve by 50 million. We're going to minus a checkbook deposit by 50 million. Okay. So afterward, the checkbook deposit becomes 150 million. And since we have a 10% reserve requirement, 10% of 150 million is 50 million. Then I need 50 million of reserve over here. Okay. So since this is just to meet the reserve deficiency, I don't need 50 million or anything like this. I just need 50 million. So A is the correct answer. Okay. And in some case in the exam, he's going to ask you, it's going to say, hey, every single thing over here is 50 million, but it's going to add you another thing saying, oh, I want to do it with asset management. Okay. If you see asset management, sell security. Okay. If you see liability management, borrow federal fund. That's the most common ways. Okay, and just in case the question is slightly different than this one, you know how to pick the right answer. Okay, question 15. The growth of the subprime mortgage market led to what? Okay, so we heard the story times and times again, I think, and hopefully it increased the demand. Okay, so subprime mortgage market broadly extended people who are able to buy a house. Okay, so these people in the old days, in normal time, they will not pass a credit check for the loan. Okay, however, the traditional loan generally, predict your income, your future income is going to cover both the principal and the interest of your mortgage. Okay. However, in here, with the subprime mortgage, people is only able to cover interest, and some of them, to be honest, they don't even have the ability to cover interest rate. So mostly it's going to rely on the increase of housing value. Okay, how to increase the housing value? Basically, you allow more people to borrow money from the bank, so more buyers in the market, so demand increased by a lot, and then the price is going to go up. Okay, so that's why B is the right answer. Question 16. When the yield curve is flat or downward sloping, it suggests the economy is more likely to do what? Okay, so many of you knows, upward sloping is a boom time, downward sloping is a recession. Okay, the reason is behind how you can work with the yield curve. Okay, so when the yield curve is downward sloping, you know that the average, so the yield curve over here the yield of this long-term interest rate is going to be the average of all short-term interest rates over here, right? Then basically we're expecting the future short-term interest rate, so I1 t in the future plus an x is going to decrease, all right? So when interest rate is low, that means there's a recession. This is basically uh, uh, based on, when the economy is overhit or is good, business are more willing to pay higher interest rate to borrow money to expand. But during the recession time, there's less demand for money to expand their business. All right, so the interest rate is very low at that time. Okay. Question 16. Then, since they require less monitoring of firms, what contracts are used more frequently than what contracts raise capital? Okay, so there are basically two types of them. One of them is debt, and the other is equity. Okay, so this is like your liability and equity and capital part on the T account. Okay, so normally people prefer debt. Okay, so I think this is D. Okay, if you remember stock price, so equity is about stock market, right? So stock market is good index about how this economy is doing. However, it's a small part of the financial options. All right. So basically, equities. If your company issue stock and they're public traded, you have to publish a lot of things on SEC. Okay. So if you go to SEC's website, you can find every single thing about a public trading company. Apple, Microsoft, Walmart. You can find out how much money they're making, what kind of activities they're doing, and what is the reason behind, not like hiring or not hiring this much of people. So there are a lot of things you need to review, and you're under a much strict monitoring if you finance with stock. Okay, so your first option is always going with debt. Okay, um, 18. Federal deposit insurance covers deposit up to 250K, but as part of a doctrine code too big to fail, the FDIC sometimes ends up covering all deposits to avoid disrupting the financial system. When the FDIC does this, it uses what? Okay, so basically your deposit is not 100% safe if you have money more than 250K. There are two common methods for FDIC. The first one is purchase and assumption. The second one is payoff. Okay, so the payoff story is really like this. All right, I'm going to pay you. If you have less than 250K, I'm going to pay whatever you deposit in this bank. If you have more than that, you're going to sustain some loss, but your first 250K is guaranteed, and the rest part depends on something else. All right, and the purchase assumption is like I'm going to ask another bank. Fed is going to talk with another bank, giving it some benefit so that this bank can take over the business of this falling bank. Okay, so then example is like BOA purchased Merrill Lynch, something like this. All right, the good thing about this method is that you are not going to lose anything. Okay, because the buying bank is going to completely inherit all the business that the falling bank is having. Okay, so if you used to have an account with Merrill Lynch that is over 250,000, if FDIC decide to use payoff method, you're going to receive 250,000 plus, some fraction of the extra money you have in your account. But since BOA purchased the Merrill Lynch, your account automatically becomes a BOA account. So no matter how much money you have in there, you still have them. Okay, so 19. One suggested method of dealing with too big to fail problem is to reimpose the restriction that were in place under what? Okay, So basically it's, where's my marker? Okay, it's here, Glass-Steagall. Okay, again, I'm not going to mention other act that I think will not be one of the right answers over here. So Glass-Steagall Act really puts a lot of restrictions on commercial banks about what they can do and what they cannot do. Okay, so for the too big to fail problem can probably kill the problem from the very beginning, since all those risky activities, commercial banks cannot do it. Okay, so they have to make a choice, either become a commercial bank that is under super strict restriction, or they can be an investment bank that just do all kinds of things that can make a lot of money, but also bearing a lot of risk. Okay. Question 20. In the United States, the government agency requiring that firms that sell securities in the public market adhere to standard accounting principles and disclose information about their sales, assets, and earnings is what? Like I said, Security and Exchange Commission. Okay, so that's where SEC, those are the people who are in charge of the stock market. Okay, and yes, that's it. So anything else? I think you probably need to know. Probably need to know a little bit about. Well, this is to browse the Federal Reserve System, Federal Trade Commission. I'm not sure. You can have some knowledge about this, but since I'm not sure it will be uh, asked about, so I'm not going to talk about in this video. Okay, if we meet it in later question, I'm going to talk about it. So good luck with everything. If you have any question, just come to my office hour or take a look at this video. I'm going to try to post the next video tomorrow afternoon, so you still have some time. Remember, final exam is on Thursday and Friday. I think it will be there for like less than 48 hours. So be careful with the time. Make sure you have a good internet connection over there, and you can take it at any time within that period. However, you only have limited time. I think you probably only have 60 minutes to finish these 40 questions, right? So good luck, work hard, and be safe. All right, and see you in next video.